on your end?
I believe so. Glenn, I'm in that PowerPoint.
It looks like it's recording.
Yeah, I just started it now though. So
okay,
from here on, we'll be recording.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So yeah, I heard from Ivan today, and I've been back and forth with our attorney just to figure out, what the timing is on the assessment process. But essentially, if any of you haven't spoken directly with CT consultants, either Ivan or Dan, probably most likely Ivan, they really want to talk to people because people have questions about where the lines might be on their property and where the meters might go, and they're in the final phases of figuring that out, and they seem to be very responsive to individual homeowners' concerns. So if you're worried about where it might go, that's your opportunity to be involved in that process. I think I don't know, I haven't checked with them as to who they haven't still reached, but if any of you haven't talked to them directly, it'd be in your best interest to do so. Otherwise, we did post the projected line placement, meter placement on the Mount Ayr Water District site fairly recently. So if you look on there and you see where they're thinking it's going to go on your property and you're not wanting it there, you need to reach out to them fairly quickly. And then, that helps us understand, I think, some of the cost. But, anyway, that's, I think, the homeowner's opportunity to really determine what that might look like. So next slide. All right, so the next phase, so there are a number of properties, whether it be lots or homes, that are annexed or have been annexed over the years into City of Columbus. And the Mount Ayr Water District cannot assess those properties for the infrastructure costs. So we're not going to service them or run extra lines to them unless they want to be part of the project. If they choose to be part of the project, they're going to pay, like all of the rest of us, a share of the overall infrastructure costs. So we need to determine if they're in or out, not only for line placement, but also to knock that amount off of the total cost so that we know what the remaining cost is that gets allocated across the rest of the district. So Bill, Ash, and I are meeting with our council next week. They've got some recommendations on where we might fall within the assessment process, and then we'll figure out, I don't know if CT consultants, DelCo, or the district are reaching out to the Columbus homeowners within the district, but some of us will be doing that over the next couple of weeks because we do need to figure that piece out. Next slide. All right, and then the allocation formula, again, when we have the engineering drawing pretty close to done, and it's getting close, and we have, we're going to be bidding out, DelCo's going to be bidding out the project. That'll get us a little closer to a total potential cost of the project for the mains. That'll give us an idea how much is going to be allocated, and then we know which of the Columbus homes are in. That's when we start to get to the point where we figure out, okay, what's the remaining amount that needs to be shared that does improve values across the district to the homes that are within the district. The Mount Ayr Water District will need to vote on the assessment formula, and as it stands now, we're looking at a mix of parcels with a home will probably be assigned a dollar amount. We will probably also assign a dollar amount for frontage, foot frontage for properties. That would include lots that aren't assigned to a home and also lots with a home. So there would be for properties that have a ton of extra parcels, or people who own parcels that don't have homes on them, they will share in some of the infrastructure cost, because the understanding is they will appreciate in value by having water accessible to them in the future should they choose to develop that lot or otherwise. So all of us, just by virtue of having DelCo available to us, whether we connect or not, are likely to see an appreciation in the value of our property, and we need to share in that cost because we're all going to benefit from it whether we connect or not. So that whole process, it takes 2 to 3 months to get through. There will be public meetings. We will make sure everybody's aware of that. There will be an appeal phase. So anybody who feels that the amount assigned to their property is unfair, there will be an appeal phase with an independent board. There might be appraisers coming out and different things. That adds to our legal cost, but which is shared amongst all of us as well. But you know, we want it to be fair and to be legal. It has to be done that way. We did get funding through the Ohio EPA. The funding was direct to DelCo since they applied on our behalf as a no-interest loan, 30-year term, which is excellent. That's going to help us spread these costs out in a way that hopefully makes it available for all of us. And then DelCo is going to be soliciting construction bids here as soon as they have a little bit more on the engineering plan, which I'm sure they'll talk about tonight. Which will give us a sense of what the final cost of the project may be, or at least get us closer.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Just to remind everyone, or if those of you are joining us for the first, for your first public meeting with DelCo and Mount Air, I wanted to touch on who DelCo is, how we operate, just to remind everybody. We are a member-owned nonprofit corporation. We have an elected board of members. So when you become members on the DelCo system, you will have you could have an opportunity to become a board member should a position open up and you be elected via a membership vote. We do have an annual meeting of our members. That is where, if there is an opening or current board members need to be reelected, that's when those nominations are taken and votes cast. We do provide service at a cost. That means we are a nonprofit organization. All profits are reinvested into the system to ensure our going concern, to make sure we have enough infrastructure, upgrades to infrastructure, to make sure that we have the best system available to our members. Financial obligation and benefits proportional to use. What that means is our water rates benefit from our economies of scale, and we are a usage-based rate structure. I'm going to turn it over to Dave, our engineering manager. He's going to go over this slide. This is the first opinion of cost from CT Consultants' initial preliminary engineering report. Dave, are you ready?
You bet. Everybody, that you can kind of soak this slide in, and obviously we're recording this so you can come back to it later too if you want to see it. But you know, this is CT Consultants' opinion of cost based off of past projects. Some things I want to call out to you. Those are the line sizes we show. We base those line sizes. The 8 and the 6 is your fire flow level line sizes. Okay, fire hydrants take a 6-inch water line or larger to supply. We show putting 9 hydrants in originally, spread out throughout the community. But understand, as because when we approached this project at the beginning, you wanted fire flow. Those bigger lines cost more money, and that's why you'll see the line size cost. The 8-inch water line, costs quite a bit more to put in than say the 4-inch water line. But you're also getting that bonus of fire flow. So that's part of why the cost is, or that's built into the cost. And then, like I said, those 9 hydrants, about $4,000 to install each one of them. And once the system's in, if hydrants want to be added later, as long as the line size is in the area that they want to be added, they can be added at a later time. It's not like, once you build it, you can't modify it. So, as long as the line sizes can support it, you have the opportunity to add more hydrants later, or you can say, hey, let's save money, cut down on the number of hydrants now, keep the line sizes larger, and then add hydrants later. But that's something that, can be discussed as a community, because this is your project and you get to say what's important to you. But so far, the feedback we've got is, having some fire protection in the area is important. As you can see down line number 29, we have rock excavation. That's built into there. So that is a big issue. We don't know that there's any rock. CT Consultants is going to be doing some 5 test bores at strategic areas that they think will tell us if that's going to be an issue. But, you know, as we told you in previous meetings when we started this, the idea of this project, rock excavation costs a lot of money. And what you're seeing there, if we hit a lot of rock, that wouldn't even cover a little bit of it. So we're hoping not to have to even use that money, but I wanted to highlight it when you see the total cost. Those are items that are built in there that may or may not get spent. We're hoping obviously not. So that just kind of a breakdown of the opinion of cost. And if you have any questions on it, feel free to speak up.
Do we want to take a moment? Does anybody have any questions regarding this? This is for the distribution system only. This doesn't account for any of the ancillary costs, not the engineering costs. There was a small loan provided to the district and some other small costs. We'll get to that in the next slide. But is there any questions regarding this slide here and costs? And any comments on water line size and hydrants at this time?
Yes, ma'am. My name is John Janning. I'm John B. Janning. My dad is John T. Janning, not to confuse the two. So I see the breakdown of $1.5 million. Looking at the cost, you know, if we are not assessing or using, for example, the rock excavation, then what happens to that money and how is it allocated to other parts or just in general?
I can answer that. I mean, the assessment process, the money would be collected alongside your real estate taxes. So the total amount that is actually spent on construction, we won't be collecting those funds until after the project's completed. So if that money's not spent, it comes off that line and it will not be allocated across the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Bill Ash. I'm just going to make a comment. I know Laura has mentioned this before, but one of the benefits of having hydrants is that you should be able to get a reduction in your home insurance costs because they are a little higher when you don't have access to the fire hydrants.
The other piece, you know, currently, I think since we have no hydrants at all, you know, they've in the past used tanker trucks and drain ponds, which is not super efficient if there's an actual fire going on. My understanding is even if it's less than a 6-inch line, they can at least use the smaller lines to fill water trucks because a lot of fire departments don't really have an abundance of water trucks anymore since we're so close to cities. So from a safety perspective, I think the hydrants are important. We'll just have to be really careful if we're minding the budget as to where they're placed and make sure that everybody's comfortable with that.
Laura, just real quick, I seem to recall at one point you mentioned that the closest tanker truck had to be borrowed from another fire department and it would be 20 minutes away.
Yeah, at least 20 minutes away. So that, you know, and I think some of the folks that have lived in Mount Ayr for a while remember, you know, if you remember back 10, 20 years, there probably been a couple fires in Mount Ayr. I don't know how devastating they were, but this day and age, it's probably not worth the risk. So if we can accommodate it, that's one of our goals because I think that will help us keep our community safer.
Hi, this is Joan Janning, not to be confused with John Janning or John Janning. That was a joke, sorry. For the 8-inch line, is that that we're saying is going to be used for fire, is that solely dedicated for use for fire or is that available for like future development?
That can be used for either. It's kind of, we did a spine where we brought the 8-inch out of Delaware County and brought it down into the system, and eventually it reduces down to where it's no longer 8-inch. But as we do all these branch offs at all these various streets, you know, you have to have enough flow to start off. And then an 8-inch is not, I mean, it's considered a mid-range fire line for this size community. it would be considered a decent sized line. You know, 6-inch obviously gets you down to the bare minimum of what fire departments require. And to give you kind of a little more background on that, if you're doing a commercial project or even a residential project in Delaware County, what they'll have a lot of times, especially if it's the dead end street, you go to the second to last hydrant is 8-inch, and then from that hydrant to the last hydrant is 6-inch. And then if you have a few more customers past that, they'll run a 2-inch or a 4-inch. So, you know, and that's like a fire department standard that's been pretty much what's gone on around Delaware's or the DelCo system. So, you know, that's what we see when the fire departments make their comments is, so, you know, when we were designing this, even though the intent of this is obviously for domestic flows, if you want fire hydrants and you want the flows, that's kind of what we want. If you sit there and said, hey, we want that reduced down, we're willing to do the whole thing in 6, you know, Ivan can make sure that that's not going to cause us any hydraulic issues, and you could possibly go that way. You know, I don't recommend it, but that's, you know, whatever you want to do. It's like, again, this is your water system.
Well, I'll second a piece that may come off of that conversation is, you know, we've been really clear, and DelCo's been, you know, very clear with us too. We are not purposefully upsizing any lines for future development. If there is ever a call for that to happen, any upsizing, any additional costs that might come to our project for any future servicing that has nothing to do with us will be assessed to that person and not to us. So everything that we're doing in this project is for the Mount Air community within the water district. You know, like I said, if there's anything in the future that might develop that would connect into any of this, that would require us to do anything differently, that will be charged to that individual and has no charge coming to us on that.
Dave, this is Bill. Did you, I think you said you were going to reach out to the Worthington Fire Chief and get their approval on the hydrant placement?
Well, I sent him a copy of, you know, the proposed water system, and, you know, said, hey, we're open to any comments that he has. You know, DelCo is a rural water system by rights, and so the fire departments, because this is not new build as far as housing, you know, they technically they can't sit there and say, hey, you have to do this, at least the way I understand it.
Right.
And that actually is to everybody's advantage, because I can tell you now, at least, and I don't know how the Worthington Fire Chief is, but Delaware County, the different townships, especially anything south of Delaware itself, when they comment, they would be you wouldn't be putting in any of the 4-inch or 2-inch. You'd be putting in large water lines, and they would be talking every 300 feet for a fire hydrant, which in essence puts the project, in my opinion, out of reach in terms of construction for what you can afford. So in this case, it's good that we don't have that. But you know, obviously fire protection is a big thing for a community, and I understand that. And I'm going to add a little bit where you, just based off of my experience, where you talk about your insurance. Everybody's insurance company does it differently. I've had people who have told me that, hey, because DelCo put a fire hydrant in my area, even though it's not at high flows, because of course we're rural water, you know, I was able to cut $200 a year off my home insurance. And then I've had other people who say, hey, my insurance company only rates or does my insurance rates based off of what they call the ISO number for the community. And they'll say, okay, based off of hydrants available and flows available and how new the fire trucks are and whether the fire department's full-time, part-time, all that goes into that ISO number. And, you know, they base it off of that. So you may not see any break depending on your insurance company. But, you know, if you reach out to your insurance company and they're giving a break, that's something that you should take into consideration in terms of, hey, I may be paying more in taxes to pay for this, but I'm also offsetting some of that by, you know, saving on my home insurance once it's all built, if, you know, within X number of feet of a fire hydrant.
Right. Well, and part of the reason we reached out to Chief Zambito is because when Aqua ran fire hydrants up in Worthington Hills, apparently they didn't use the right kind for the Worthington trucks to connect to. So we wanted to be sure, not just with placement, but the actual size would work with the fire department that services our area. So.
Like I said, the chief has not reached back to me, but I'm hoping to.
Okay.
I'll reach out to something. But yeah, that is a concern too. We use national standard fire hydrants, City of Columbus has their own custom type of fire hydrant that they probably used for 100+ years. And so, you know, ours definitely look different than theirs. And I think even Dublin might have their own special kind. But when you get into that, the cost of the hydrant goes up a lot. You know, like I said, ours is the same hydrant that's being used all across the country. So I hope Worthington has the ability to use a national standard fire hydrant.
I would imagine they do, but I'll follow up with him because I know he knew you were going to reach out to him.
Any further discussion here, or should we move on? Let's move forward. If you think of something later on, no worries. Just go ahead and pop in with your question and we'll address it at that time. I mentioned a few moments ago when we were talking about the cost of opinion, that there were some ancillary project costs, the engineering design, there was a loan to the district made to the district by DelCo Water, and some of the emergency repairs we've done. There's about $162,000 worth of ancillary costs at this time. Based on the preliminary costs, we're at $1.7 million. We are hoping that the distribution costs come in well below, but that remains to be seen until we go to bid and how those bids come in. One of the things that we need to determine, because your assessment can only hit $1.3 million. Is that correct, Laura?
I mean, our loan was for 1.5. So we had committed to assessing 1.3. The one piece that comes into play is we cannot assess more than the anticipated appreciation in value for any individual property. So 1.3 is where we thought it may come in.
Okay.
For people to understand that the loan that DelCo made to the district was in part because we had some legal cost in forming the district. We've also had some operational costs to develop some of the processes that allow us to move forward with actually, getting the project going. So those are going to be assessed in. There may be opportunities in the future for some of these costs to be covered by future homes that want to connect or any development where some of those funds come back in at a later point and come through and kind of wash through the system and reduce everybody's output. For people who initially are part of the project, we should expect to see some savings in the future or some money coming in, some revenue streams from that, but we don't know what that will be just yet.
So it is yet to be determined how we're going to collect any of the distribution system costs that exceed the 1.3 million tax assessment. If it does end up being 1.3 is the limit on the assessment. And if there is overage, there may not be any overage. Again, we won't know that final number until and I shouldn't say final number, but we won't know that solid estimate until those bids come in. And then again, you won't know the final absolute number until the construction project is done. So, the hope is that there is no overages, but if there is overages, we're going to have to determine how we're going to collect those evenly and fairly across the district residents. The other item that we want to talk about is the tap. Did you have something to add, Laura?
Yeah, just real quick, just for fun. When we had priced out all the different alternatives for our community, Columbus would have been, I think, 3.2 million was their gross estimate for the total cost of the project. That did not include any water district fees or anything like that. So when we priced this, DelCo came in well under, clearly the most affordable option for us to have a sustainable water source.
And that's something that comes from being a cooperative or a nonprofit. We've got that economies of scale, and we can really hit our buying power. So again, we're hoping to whittle this number down as much as we can so we don't have overages and we actually go below the 1.3, but that remains to be seen. Your tap fees, which is the actual connection to the main, DelCo Water is going to collect that over a 30-year period on your water bill. So if you buy a tap or if you hook up to the system, you're going to have a water bill and you're going to get a surcharge in addition to your usage fees each month. And I put together an estimated average of what a water bill with a tap fee surcharge over the 30-year time frame would be. The typical usage for a 4-person household and for a good majority of our customers is for 4 people, about 5,000 gallons. The water itself would be $36.80 at today's rates. And then you would add the $15 surcharge, totaling $51.80. I'm going to pause here a moment and let you look at this. I don't want to rush you through it. And if you have any questions over the last couple of slides, please throw them out there.
Yeah, I have a I have a question. This is Jim Lambright. If we want to pay this upfront connection fee, I'm assuming we can do that. And then also, if we do have to go on this plan where we have the surcharge, if we decide we want to pay that off early, we can do that as well. Is that correct?
You can, although we had another project that did this, has the tap fee surcharge on the bill, and it stays with the location. So let's say you're only going to live there 5 more years and you're going to sell your home. Well, the rest of that surcharge, or the rest of the balance of that connection charge, is with the new homeowner. So you paid while you were there, and then when the new people moved in, they're paying their part of their use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and this is Bill Ash. It's also not accruing interest. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is 0% over 30 years. And, you know, I had picked 30 years because the EPA loan is 30 years. If you're comfortable with a higher number, great. We can make it 20 years or 15 years. If you don't want, you know, I just picked 30 years because that's where the EPA loan was at.
Seems reasonable.
Well, and for some perspective, with all the repairs we've had over the years with our current system, I mean, we've all been paying, what, $50 a month? No matter how much we used. If we were out of state for 3-4 months, we paid the same amount because we were paying operating costs. So, and we had the additional risk of fees for large repairs that we weren't expecting. So this gives us a predictable per use model that we can control a lot better than what we have currently.
Yeah, I should mention real quickly, even though the amount is relatively small compared to the rest of the project, that $4,000 in repairs was for leaks that DelCo helped us fix over the last year, or since last November. It's possible we could still have another one before we decommission the system. We're hoping not. But the ability to spread that across 30 years prevented the people that are on the Mount Air water system from having to pay an additional assessment to cover that $4,000 now. And also when we collect the assessment, that $4,000 will be spread over the 30 years, but only will be added to the assessments for those people that are on the Mount Air water system today. Those people that are not on the Mount Air water system today won't have to pay for that repair.
I've got. Sorry.
I just had one more question. So the base rate for your water, do you know, can you, and I mean, I don't need an exact number, but do you know what on average, you know, because it's co-op, I mean, do you know on average what that rate goes up yearly, or is it, you know, what that percentage is like? Can you give us what that percentage rate is?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, in the last 2 years, we have not done a rate increase. The years, probably the 4 or 5 years in a row prior to those, we had approximately a 1% increase to our rates. We are very mindful and take a really close look at our budget every year and what our expected consumption is for the year. And we like to have a balanced budget. So we try and keep our rates as low as we can without losing money, but also without having a huge amount of profit at the end either. Of course, like a year like this year, with as dry as it was a month or over the last month, you know, we've seen a lot of consumption, so revenue was nice. So typically it's been about a 1%. We do not like to give a great big, hey, hello, we're going to do a 20% increase. We'd rather do a 1% over 4 or 5 years in a row instead of a big one all at one time.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. There was another question, I think.
Yes. Yeah, this is Joan Janning again. This is super helpful. I'm really glad to see this. The tap fees was kind of one of my biggest concerns because I live alone. I'm a small business owner, and quite frankly, all of this is very scary, especially when we're talking about $1.7 million in construction and engineering fees. So,
Right.
And maybe this will be answered later. So tap fees, understand that, that's cool. But when we go back to the construction costs, I think Laura said that they're going to be collected with our real estate taxes. So I guess the biggest concern I have is I'm trying to figure out in budget how this is going to affect me monthly. And, quite frankly, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to afford where I'm living right now because I'm going to be hit with my share of this 1.7 million.
And we don't anticipate that the total end cost is actually going to be 1.7. We expect, hopefully, it's going to be quite a bit less than that. I mean, we're still, not to be locked in, but a gross estimate, $500 to $700 per property that has a home on it is what we're looking at per year for 30 years. That's what our hope is. Hopefully that's a manageable amount for most people. If you get some savings in your homeowner's insurance, that should offset some of that. But, we don't know ultimately where it's going to end, but our goal is absolutely to make this as affordable as possible. And for many of us who are on the current water system, frankly, our water system is going to go away when this project goes in. So if somebody has an alternative of, hey, I'm going to try to drop in a well, we expect that your costs out of pocket for the infrastructure should be less than what a well would be, with the caveat that your property should appreciate in value by having the DelCo water. So it's kind of hard to explain succinctly here, but my guess is the most cost-effective route for all of us is going to be to do the DelCo route. Otherwise, you're going to pay the infrastructure and potentially a well cost, but your value in your home should appreciate to the point where you have additional equity, whether you need to draw that out to help fund this or you can use it for other things. But we should all expect to benefit from this project at least the amount that it costs us to do it. So hopefully a sum zero game, or at least a minimal cost, and certainly less than doing a well with no gain at all. But we don't, as a community, we don't have a choice but to do something, because our water system, our infrastructure is not going to hold up. So something was going to have to change one way or the other. I believe this will be our most cost-effective route, and we'll do our best to manage costs. But it's kind of the reality where we are today.
And just to reiterate, Laura, you were saying that you thought the annual tax assessment would be around $500 to $700 per.
That's where we think it's going to be. The more properties that join, the lower that cost will be for everybody.
Right.
Because there's some areas where the lines are going to have to be whether a home connects or not, and there's other areas where if the home's not going to connect, we don't have to run a line and nobody has to pay that additional cost. So, we're sharing in the benefit, we're sharing in the cost. But $500 to $700 per year over a period of time hopefully is manageable for most of us. But the appreciation and value to our homes of having a centralized, sustainable water system will be immediate. So you'll get an immediate gain that you pay for over 30 years is the goal.
This is Bill Ash. Just one thing as I'm listening here that I want to make sure there's not confusion. The tap fee is the fee that DelCo always charges their members to connect to their system. And I think it's normally like $5,600 or something. It is not to be confused with the cost of running the line from the meter to your house. That's a different thing.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in the next couple of slides. Dave's going to
Right.
touch on that.
And also just, if anybody connects to the system later, builds a house someplace in the district and connects to the system, they pay that tap fee up front.
Correct.
And additionally, they'll pay a portion of the infrastructure cost as if they had joined early on. The other piece with that, if somebody joins later, they might have to finance the infrastructure part themselves. So the 30-year no interest term that the water district got from the EPA is available for those who join right now. If someone were to join 10 years from now, they would either get, a 20-year, we could offer the terms, but in a 20-year term, the same amount cost over time, but everybody's going to share that cost. So that's where in the future, if somebody were to connect or develop a lot, those additional revenues coming in will offset everybody's obligations. So those of us who join early should expect to see some savings over time. We just don't know right now what those will look like.
Did that answer your question, Joan?
Yes, very much so. I very much appreciate it. And also I would like to say I appreciate all the work that Laura and Bill have been doing on this, because I know it's been a thorn in everybody's side for a while now. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. Is there any other questions before we move on to the next section?
Yes, I have a question. This is Phyllis Funk. Could you give us any idea, those of us that already have a well, we just had one put in about a year or so ago. Could you tell us how this is going to affect us?
It's for your personal well. Dave, do you want to handle that question?
Are you talking about how it'll affect your well, or are you talking about how it'll affect your cost of life, I guess? I mean,
Yeah.
And Laura can correct me if I'm wrong. If you're in the district, your taxes are going to go towards paying for the distribution system, whether you opt to use it or not. Now, if you opt to stay on your well and you're happy with your well, you can do that, and you won't receive a DelCo water bill with any rate or surcharge to it, but you're still paying more taxes towards the distribution system. So, and at the same time, you'll still get the fire protection whether you choose to use it or not. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll update that real quick. So it's technically an assessment, not a tax, but you will you'll expect to see an appreciation in your home value from having DelCo available. So when you sell your property, or if in the future someone wanted to connect, since you've already paid essentially the infrastructure cost, that person would only have to pay the tap fee at that time to DelCo and run a service line if they needed to in order to connect. So you should expect to benefit at least the amount of your cost, your portion of the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else that has a question at this juncture?
This is Bill. I just make one last comment on wells, and we can leave that subject. But there are properties that are down in the floodplain, and right now our current system has the wells down in the floodplain. We had that flood issue in May. We were very fortunate that our system didn't get contaminated by that, but that's one of the risks that will go away if when we are on DelCo water. We won't have to worry about flooding. If you have a private well and your well is down in the floodplain, that could get contaminated, and you wouldn't be able to drink the water because that river water is pretty nasty. And so that's one of the risks for those properties that are down low like that they may run into issues.
And
Okay, well,
to tie into that too, we've had a couple of properties that have tried to drill wells in the last few years and found that they couldn't get good water at great expense and ended up coming back onto our current water system. So, and some of the folks, I don't know if Susie's on, but some of the folks that have been in Mount Air for a while know that most of our homes that are on the current water system, the community water system, over the years, we used to have their own individual wells, and gave them up at some point when their wells either went bad or they couldn't get good water. So I don't know what the possibility is for some of the homes in our property district to get their own water, but it might not be worth the risk.
Well, for us, doesn't make a difference. We just put our well in about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
And
We
if
just
you're
paid-
fine, that's fine. But you know, we had some that couldn't do it and couldn't get good water, or spent a fortune trying to get good water. So the other concern I have, and of course this is a side note, but if the Sheetz gas station goes in over near Aqua, there's concern about poisoning the aquifer, and I'm not sure how that flows north and south, but our current water system taps into that same aquifer. So we have some concerns environmentally about that in the future.
Mhm.
Phyllis, this is Glenn. Just to comment, there are plenty of homes that are adjacent to our system that have a well that have stayed on that well for 20, 30 years and never tied in. But it's there. If you sell the home, maybe the next homeowners might want it, or maybe you might need it some other day. But there's nothing wrong with sticking on your own well if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And,
Okay,
and
thank you.
some people might want to maintain it for lawn care and outside things, and connect as well, so that you have options, which is always a good place to be.
Okay, if we have no further comments or questions at this point, I'm going to move on. Oops, I went too far. I'm going to turn it over to Dave. I know this map is not as big as we would like it for a PowerPoint, but Dave's going to walk us through. This is the initial proposal from CT. Dave, take it away.
No problem. Thank you. Like I said, this is the base layout that we've got right now. We're going to be making some changes because we want to try to get that number down on the overall estimate. And obviously, the less pipeline you put in, the cheaper the overall project's going to be. So, you know, as we've talked with people and we've collected paperwork, we've shown you what we preliminary showed for your location. And that's what we were going off at that time, but we may be making some changes, and we'll reach out to those people again and say, hey, we're proposing to make these changes. You know, most of this system is being put in inside the road right of way. So, you know, those easements aren't even technically being used, but easements are a thing that every customer on the DelCo water system gives. And so don't think like, you know, it's a, you know, a bonus. It didn't really, because your community is very tight. Is that the way I want to put it? You got very short, or, you know, narrow roads and narrow road right of ways, and then houses are really close. And so, you know, it's not like being out in the country where the house is, you know, 150 feet off the road and there's all kinds of room out front. So, you know, most of this is being put in the road right of way, and, you know, we're going to try to do the best we can with it. And, you know, if you haven't reached out to Ivan yet, with CT Consultants, I know we did some doorknob hangings, we did some mailers, that type of thing. You know, he's willing to, you know, talk with you about your property, make adjustments to this system based off of your property, and do things that's the best. We want to work around your existing wells and, you know, gas lines and all that good stuff. And everybody has septic systems and, you know, trees that you may like in your yard. We're going to try to do this without taking any trees. We're hoping to. I mean, it's not a project this size. That's not feasible to do it 100% without taking some, but we're going to try to be very careful about it and be respectful to your properties. So, you know, if you haven't talked to Ivan, please do, because once we get to building, that it's not as easy to work around stuff at that point. Now's the planning stage. Let's get it done now. Does anybody have any questions on the basic layout right now? And like I said, you're gonna see some changes, so don't fall in love with this, but you know, this is kind of where we're at right now. I know that you know, that manifold on the west side, going along there, we may be shifting that onto one side or the other of the property line, depending on trees down through there, because we don't want to take out trees if we can help it. And you know, that's the other thing. Your community is a very dense area in terms of trees and such, and so it makes it very beautiful, but it also makes it not as conducive to new utilities. So we will do our best to be perspective of that. Any questions? Okay, Chris, let's go to the next slide.
So the next slide I'm going to touch on real quick, and then Dave's going to take over again and talk about some pricing estimates. So what DelCo is going to do with the help of a contractor who wins the bid for the project is install the water distribution system, and we will install a service and a meter on each property that signs up for service with DelCo Water. And we will maintain service to the point of metering. Again, your point of metering is going to be out in your yard, along the frontage or side, depending on the orientation of your home and your property. What the homeowner is going to need to do is install a service line from the home to the meter if you need a new service line. You're also going to want to install an expansion tank on your hot water tank for thermal expansion. And you're going to want to disconnect your well or existing service from the residence. If you're going, you can maintain your well if you have a private well for external use, but you have to have a complete separation, and Dave can field some questions in regards to that as well. We also want to make sure that you identify where your septic tanks and your leach fields are, and point them out to Ivan and CT Consultants, so we make sure that we can avoid those and build around those, so we don't cause any damage there.
All right, I'm going to jump in here real quick on that, Chris. In terms of keeping your service line, I have met with at least one property owner who had a service line that's less than 10 years old. It's polyethylene. He knew right where the curb box was, where it connects to the current mount air system, which tells us our point of connection. So, you know, in his case, it was definitely worth doing. If you have an older service line, you know, stainless steel or, you know, something that's not in good shape, I strongly recommend you consider replacing it. If you have an existing service line that you intend to keep, as long as we know, you know, where it hooks to the mount air system, we can make the connection to the new meter and the new distribution system. And then all that you would have to do is make sure you have a valve on the inside in that thermal expansion tank. The cost to put in a new service line, you know, could be between $1,000 and $2,000. I believe Mr. Ash had mentioned that, you know, once we know who the contractor is that's doing the distribution system, they may talk to him about, you know, doing individual service lines too. But until we bid it, we'll have no idea who that's going to be. This is going to be a public bid, which means that anybody can bid on it in terms of contractors. And so because the EPA loan requires that it be open to the public, you know, it's not something that DelCo can narrow down who our choices are. Like I said, if you choose to keep your existing service line, you got to add that shutoff valve and expansion tank. I'm assuming on average, I shouldn't say assuming, on average, from what I've heard over the years, plumbers are, you know, $500 or, you know, give or take 100 either way to do that work. Personally, you can do it yourself. I did mine myself. The expansion tank cost $50. The shutoff valve was $5, and I think I had a T and then my time, but I'm a handy person, so I was able to do that. You may not be that person and you want to hire it out. And so like I said, I think I had $60 in parts. So just give you kind of an idea of that. We're not doing any inspection of your home once this is done. You know, you're signing as part of your paperwork saying, hey, I plan on putting on in the expansion tank and the shutoff valve. And, you know, those are things you're going to wish you had. They protect your existing home's water system inside the house, the existing plumbing. So, you know, that's why we have them as a rule. So, you know, definitely please make sure you put those in.
This is Jim Lambert. I got a question. So on the timing of this, so when you guys are putting lines in on these streets, so how is this going to work? Are you guys going to give us time to, because a plumber may not be able to be out there the very exact day that you put the line in or when the line's completed. So I'm assuming that we're going to still be on the mount air water until at some point there's going to be some schedule that's going to be laid out that says, hey, we're doing this street. It's going to go live this date, and we're going to, you know, shut off water access to the mount air well on this date. Is that how that's going to work, or can you explain further on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're going to build the mount air system the way we're hoping this works, and because you don't know exactly where your existing distribution system is. We're hoping to avoid it. We have some basic maps that Bill was able to provide us to try to keep both systems running parallel at the same time. So what'll happen is we're going to build the distribution lines down your road, and we will set a new meter installation on your property, okay? And get the main line up and running, make sure everything's safe for drinking, and then you'll have until the day that Bill decides he wants to shut down the Mount Air distribution system to hook up. And that could be months and months and months. Because you don't have isolation valves or that I'm aware of, you know, it's an all or nothing thing. So it's not like they're going to say, well, the DelCo line is good on this street, so, you know, we're going to shut everybody off on just this street. There's no, you know, because you don't have existing lines, I believe you'll, until the system is completely done, you know, that Mount Air system, I believe, is going to keep running, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then, but there will be a day, and I guarantee it'll probably be with, if we get done with this water system, I'm going to guess Bill's going to start saying, hey, within a few months, you need to get connected up because he's getting tired of running that distribution system. And of course, the longer you keep it running, you got to keep paying to get it fixed whenever there's a leak. And, you know, that's something that's why we're doing this new system. So, you know, if you're on the west side of the road, I believe, or west side of Olentangy River Road, you're probably going to have a longer time to make changes and get hooked up to the new system than the east side, because we're going to start at the Delaware County line or in that area most likely and work our way south and build all the streets as we go, because obviously the Delaware County line is the source of the water. So, you know, I anticipate that people on the north end Beach Drive will have the opportunity to get their connection done sooner, and, you know, they'll have longer to make that happen than people clear down on the south end.
Yeah, Dave, this is Bill Ash. We do have 3 isolation valves that we could use. So, you know, we could isolate everything south of Walnut and Ash. We can isolate Mulberry, you know, that whole Mulberry area and over to Maple. And then we can isolate the east of 315. So, you know, there are some zones that we could do, but we would coordinate with you and with all of the homeowners in those areas before we did that.
Yeah, I understand that me and the project itself, DelCo running the project, the CT consultants, we're not going to force anybody to do anything. You as a community get to decide as you want to shut down sections then of your existing distribution system. And obviously the quicker you get them shut down, the less chance that they're going to have a leak and that you're going to have problems. And, you know, so keep that in mind.
On the other hand, you know, if we decide that it does make sense to just keep the whole thing running until we're all done, you know, that may be an option, but we really won't know until we kind of get things rolling.
Everyone, I just want to jump in here. This is Dan Barham with CT on the keeping both systems running. Everything, I totally agree with everyone's plans. Just mentioned, you know, keeping both running and all that stuff. But you never know what's going to happen during construction. If we find out there's a significant part of the Mount Air water system that's leaking really bad or falls apart when we dig, and we happen to dig near it, those kinds of things, you'll be having to spend a ton of money to keep your Mount Air system running. That means, you know, so all I'm saying is there could be some unforeseen events happening during construction that means part of your system needs to get shut off, if it can be, you know, obviously if the DelCo system is up and running. But there, you know, it might not be as planned out as we'd like. It's possible that could happen. So just be aware of that. I would not wait till the last second to be ready to switch over, I guess is what I'm saying. Because you never know what your hand might get forced there. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, we found that even traffic and things like that rattle the earth just enough. Our system's very fragile, so we'll have to plan that out and have some contingency plans in place.
Thanks for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Is there anything further at this point, or shall we move on? I'm
There was
sorry,
somebody-
Tam-
Yeah, there's somebody there, but we lost him, I think.
Tammy, did you have a question?
So you can hear me?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, great. So you may have said this and I missed it, but I'm under the impression that we're going to switch over next summer. Is that right? Is there a particular date in the summer or approximate time frame in the summer that we're going to be able to switch over?
I'll jump in there on that. It's all dependent on time frame. It's, how soon can we get the assessment going? How soon can we get everybody committed? How soon can we get all the paperwork in? Get the final distribution system decided? Because like I said, we still got some changes we're going to be making on that, and getting all that aligned. Once we get everything in place and we put this project out to bid, the contractor is going to go to work, and they'll, if we bid it out in October, November, they're probably going to try to work during the winter as much as the weather will allow. And Dan may be able to speak up to how long construction, but I'm anticipating 3 to 4 months worth of construction from beginning to end.
Yeah, Dave, I think you're right. It depends exactly when we let them loose. Obviously, the winter will be a little slower than prime.
Absolutely. And Ohio's been very nice to us in terms of winter weather. 10 years ago, we hardly ever worked through the winter, shut down in December and didn't start back up till March. I'll bet you 4 out of the last 5 years, we've worked straight through the winter and on all our projects. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had some opportunity to get some stuff done this winter. And obviously the sooner the better, because your distribution system currently is falling apart. So, and every day that you let go, it has more problems that cost money. So, we don't want to, we're moving as fast as we can, but, we ask that everybody involved, if your neighbors haven't, tell them, hey, call Ivan, make sure Ivan knows where your stuff is, and, let's get that paperwork in and get things moving,
Thank you.
You're welcome, Tammy. Moving on here, I want to hit real quick about the documents you received in the mail, I don't know, a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago at this point. Time has flown for me. I've kind of lost track of when we sent those out. It is very important that we get those packets back. One, it lets us know that you're committing to the project. Two, we need the easements. So we need the water line easements. It allows for the installation of the water main and the appurtenances to service your property. Dave mentioned earlier that most of the mains are probably going to be in the roads or in public right of way. However, we do still need the easement to set the meter and service on your property. We need the signed water users agreement. That user agreement basically says that, DelCo agrees to provide you service in accordance with our rules and regulations, and you agree to adhere to the rules and regulations, pay your bill. If you don't pay your bill, we're gonna, disconnect service, that sort of stuff. We don't want your firstborn or anything. The Ohio EPA does require us to have a cross-connection questionnaire filled out for properties such as yours, coming from a well, some of you coming from a well connection. And we also need you to validate and make sure that you're aware of the thermal expansion tank requirement to prevent the thermal expansion causing damage to your plumbing. So we in the office at DelCo, there are folks there that can help answer your questions in regards to those documents, help you fill them out. There are videos online at our website at delcowater.org that you can look at the videos. They're fairly short in time frame. They'll give you a real quick overview on what you need to do, what's important to pay attention to on those documents, and how to fill them out. Are there any questions remaining with the group that's on tonight with that packet of documents that you would have received that we can help answer for you tonight? Laura, did you have something?
No, I was just waiting for anyone else to, but just to say you guys have done a great job of answering, I think, what a lot of the questions have been since the packets went out. I will say again, if anyone needs a notary, there are a couple of us in the neighborhood, and I know DelCo, you guys have somebody there, but I'm going to be bringing my stamp home again this weekend. If anyone needs help notarizing their documents, I'm happy to do that on my front porch, safe distance and all that. But, you know, I think we're going to do these monthly, right? These meetings. So we'll just, you know, we're trying to figure out the best way to get a hold of everybody. We've got the social media. We do a letter, you know, as often as we can. These meetings are meant to be, you know, question and answer as much as updates. So thank you so much to DelCo for providing this extra information for us.
You're welcome. Thank you. There's a couple more slides and then we'll open it up for final questions. I just wanted to hit the new service connection again. You'll see a picture on the left-hand side of the screen. That is a typical installation, what your meter will look like once it's all done and graded and everything. Connection, again, is voluntary. If you have your own well, you are welcome to use it. You do not have to connect to us. However, we must make sure that you're aware that you will have an assessment along with your property taxes for the repayment of the distribution system. Not a tap install because you didn't get a connection to the system. And then property owners who want to connect to DelCo, you have your tap fee. We need your easement, water users, and the EPA service requirement forms. And then again, real quick, for water bills that go out to the members, there is a monthly minimum charge, which is that $12. It comes with 1,500 gallons. That is charged whether you use water or not. The monthly minimums and usage charges will remain with the tap. So if you sell your house, that needs to be paid before you transfer your property. Otherwise, the new owner gets stuck with it and the water gets turned off until that's paid. We do service disconnections when members have the unfortunate circumstances where they may fall behind a couple of months. It's typically $45 in 2 months. If it's unpaid, we will issue notices to disconnect. 5% penalties are applied to unpaid charges that are past 3 days past the due date. And then bills are generated monthly and are due 20 days after they are mailed. And they are always based on actual monthly readings. Unless there's some catastrophic event, weather-related event, we always collect readings, actual readings from the meters. So you are paying for what you actually use. We do not estimate. One of the things I will mention is you guys in your community will get our new cellular meters, which means you will also have access to an Ion Water app that you can install on your phone or on your PC, where you can get hourly readings for the last 24 hours, and that goes back for the history of your service. So you can see what your water usage is on a daily basis. You can set it up to send you alerts. You can say, hey, I want to know if my meter is running more than 10 gallons an hour for a certain period of time, and it'll email you or text you that you've got a possible leak and let you know that. So your community will be installed. We'll have those types of meters installed for you to use, which we are really excited to start using. We have another small village that when we took them over, we put them in, and it has been really successful up there. People have been really excited to have that. That is all of my slides for this evening. So if there's any other questions, comments, concerns, we'd love to hear them, and we'll try and address them here tonight for you.
I've got another question. This is Joan again.
Uh-huh.
When we are in the construction process, do you anticipate there being any types of road closures? Because I know for a lot of us, there's only one way to get to our house. So are there going to be any, weird things like that going on?
I'll go ahead and handle this. I don't anticipate that. And if we do, we normally will let people know ahead of time, but that happens very infrequently on our project, so I don't anticipate that.
And Joan, if that were to happen, you're welcome to park on my property. I think we'll all figure it out. We're a pretty small community.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate, or Laura. I can always go down to my brother's house and just have a sleepover too. So all good.
Laura, this is Crystal on Edgecliff. Do we have any kind of like community record of where our water service lines are currently?
There's a hand-drawn map. Bill has, I'll email that to you, Crystal, tomorrow. Okay. It's subject to, have things changed since it was drawn? I mean, it's literally a hand-drawn map. It's the best we have. Has not been updated for years, but yours is probably fairly predictable because the line crosses 315 at Plumtree, so it would come up probably on the south end of your property. But we haven't done any repairs, Bill, on that side of Edgecliff for a while, except where it crosses famous Amos's property. So we really haven't tied that into that line in the whole time I've been here.
Yeah, the east, the part of Edgecliff that's east of 315, there's a line that runs kind of parallel to that drainage ditch that's just south of Moffat's, or just east of Moffat's place. And then it tees and goes both directions on the south side of Edgecliff.
And DelCo has a copy of that, Crystal, so they're going to work around it where they can. But I'll send you the hand-drawn map tomorrow so you can see, or maybe tonight. I can probably pull it up tonight.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'm also understanding that we can go ahead and get service lines placed like as soon as possible, and then whenever DelCo comes through, they will as a courtesy hook us up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But you'll need to make sure you know where that meter is going to be.
Right.
Absolutely, and you can coordinate that with Ivan and say, hey, and if you need one of us to come out to your property, we can, do that and say, hey, run your service line to here, and we'll set the meter there when we come through and build. It's not a problem at all. And if you run the type of service line we have a fitting for, we definitely will make that connection. And if you're not sure what types they are, Ivan has a list, but it's also on our website, the DelCo Water website. There's a guide to selecting a service line, and it lists every type of service line we'll hook up.
Dave did mention earlier that once we know who the contractor is, that I will try to work with them to see if we can get some kind of a group discount for having multiple people use them to install their service lines. Can't promise anything at this point, as he mentioned, but we will try to do that.
Is there anything further from the group? Any questions, comments? Glenn, would you like to make some closing remarks?
Just thanks for joining us this evening. We'll do this once a month, and I would say to Joan Janning, I thought your joke was quite funny. It's just hard to get feedback in the virtual world, so yeah, we appreciate you joining us tonight, and feel free to email us and ask questions, but then we'll be back on the same time next month. So hopefully we'll see you then if you have any questions with the project. And again, appreciate your time. Thanks to Laura, thanks to Bill for all your help on this, and to CT Consultants, as well as our staff for joining us tonight. Thank you all.
We'll send out the date and time for sure on all the social media, plus the Mount Air Water District site, and I'll probably put a letter together. We may have more information about the assessment process by then, so look for that in a few weeks.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. We will be talking to you in about a month, and let us know if you have any questions in the meantime. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.